History, how much longer do you anticipate taking?
Terrible at estimating. I don't know, maybe a half an hour.
So suggest why don't we take 5 while we're getting the stream set up, so, as it's ready to go.
It's up. I prefer to finish it, okay?
Yeah, it's fine. I just figured maybe we were having some technical difficulties.
No, that's fine.
It says live. Okay, I think we're good.
Okay, Mr. Amy, continue.
Okay, thank you. At the last hearing, we were,
No, I understand. Fine. Okay.
Oh my goodness, this one's.
That's good. You can hear me. Right? Mhm.
you ready?
Yes.
Okay, at the last hearing, we discussed the nursery school and also the Hebrew school. You said that the Hebrew school was for ages, first grade to seventh grade. And what were the ages for the nursery school? Because I heard a couple of different, age ranges, and I just wanted to confirm. Do you know? Will it be 4 and under, or?
It's a work in progress, and based on the questions and so on, so we've given it some more thought. It will mirror the programs, as I testified last time, that would be similar to the programs available at other houses of worship. I talked about his children's program, Maplewood. So again, that's something that we've done, but we anticipate regularly the full range of 1 year, it seems, to about 2.5 years old or so. But it's a work in progress, as I told one of the board members last time.
And have you submitted an application yet to the state to operate that school, or have you started preparing that application?
No,
Do you know if that approval will have a maximum number of children that can be enrolled at the nursery school?
I imagine so.
And will the applicant make that application and any approval for that school available to the board in the township?
I don't see why we would do that. No,
You will not?
no. It says something that our obligation to the state, I don't see why it has to do with the board.
And you testified that the nursery school will occupy the ground floor of the building. Is that right?
Most of the ground floor, not the entire ground floor, yes.
Okay, so the ground floor is approximately 8,000 square feet. Is that right?
Yes,
So about how much of that 8,000 square feet would be occupied by the nursery school?
about 5,200. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay, and the rest of that?
Although I just would, excuse me, sorry, I did want to point out, there will be a testimony from the architect who has the dimension and scale floor plan, so that,
Thank you.
and that's been on file for several months, so he would be, the professional who squarely within his bailiwick to answer detailed questions about square footage.
And what about the kitchen? Would the nursery school also be using the kitchen on the property?
I don't think so.
The kitchen's on the first floor, right?
The kitchen is on a floor above, yes.
Okay, so then the kitchen would only be used for the services that you talked about, is that right?
I don't anticipate the nursery school students using the kitchen.
Okay, will there be on-site cooking for the nursery school?
I could not answer that question today, I don't know.
Okay, you don't know if meals will be provided for the students or anything
I
like
don't
that?
know.
And will the nursery school also occupy or use any other portions of the building other than that 5,200 square feet on the ground floor?
No,
Will there be a separate entrance for the nursery school?
yes,
And would the nursery school have a set area outside of the property that it can use?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Well, the plans showed a play area.
Yeah.
At one point, I think the November 13th
Yes.
meeting, a play area was added to the plans. Is that exclusively to be used by the nursery school, that play area?
No,
And will there be a set time when that area will be exclusively used by the nursery school?
during nursery school hours, I imagine, teachers or staff or security would prevent strangers from the street from coming in general. So the answer is yeah, probably.
And you said that nursery school hours would be 9 a.m. to 2 p.m.?
I actually didn't say that. The hours we're not 100% sure about. We're still working
Okay, I believe
progress.
your traffic engineer testified to 9 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Could be. I don't know. I don't recall.
But those are not the set hours for the nursery school?
No, I think I testified actually, if I remember correctly. I don't recall 100%, but I do think I said that there's early drop off, there's late pickup. I do think I spoke about the program that we would be imitating in Maplewood. And I do think I also spoke about the other temples and other houses of worship that have late pickup, early drop off, late pickup. If I recall, I spoke about that, and and it just did testify again that we would be modeling after the local programs.
So there were,
Both to be competitive and also to fill the need.
so where there will be before care and after care offered for the nursery school, is that what you're saying?
That is our plan, yes.
So the formal nursery school hours will be 9 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Yeah,
and
it's
then there
not,
will be
we don't
before
plan a
care and
nursery
after
school,
care?
yeah, just to correct you, we don't plan a nursery school per se, which, one of the members of the public corrected us that that's a term for a specific age. I think a preschool is generally a better term. Be as it may, we will have a range of hours, which I've testified to, and a range of arrivals and departures, as I've just testified to, and I think I said that last time too.
Will you provide the hours for the before care and after care that are going to be offered at the property?
We can. I
Um,
don't know if the board needs that, but we can.
Don't you think that's relevant to your traffic engineer's analysis?
I think I indicated at the beginning of the proceedings this evening, that to the extent that that's relevant to satisfy the board's traffic consultant, that information is needed in order to be satisfied and comfortable with the traffic analysis, that yes, we'll provide that. But over and beyond that, to kind of, again, it's a new program that's not currently in existence, asking for projections and to micromanage that and impose conditions on numbers at this point would be premature and not appropriate.
Thank you.
Is this, we've used a couple of different terms during the application, a house of worship, your plans say a Shabbat. Is this different from a synagogue? I'm just trying to understand, like, is this a smaller type of facility, or what's the difference between the terms? Synagogue,
I don't know the
Shabbat,
difference.
shul. I've heard the word shul. What does that mean?
I don't know the difference between the terms.
Is this considered a shul or a Shabbat, or it's a synagogue? They're all the same things?
I think I just testified that I'm not aware of a difference between the terms.
Is a shul like more of a school? Is that what it is?
I think you provided testimony to that I think satisfied the question that they're all a similar definition.
And is the school, the nursery school and the Hebrew school, is that a significant part of the application for the board?
It's an important part of our religious mission, yes.
Okay, and I understand you said most of the ground floor is going to be occupied by the nursery school, and then the second floor will be occupied by the Hebrew school, right?
I don't know if is it the second floor or the third floor?
Uppermost.
The uppermost floor is the Hebrew
Mezzanine?
school. Yeah, I don't know,
It's not-
mezzanine, not mezzanine, it's a third floor. In a commercial building, it would be considered a third floor.
And then will there also be outside areas used by the Hebrew school?
I'm sure there would be, yeah.
And are there going to be any temporary structures on the property at any time?
I cannot tell you right now, we don't plan on having temporary structures, but I can't tell you that now.
Do you know why the use of the property as a school and a nursery school wasn't included in the public notice for the application? Or
I think
any
it
of the
was,
application
actually. I think
materials?
it was actually.
Well, actually, it wasn't. I have a copy of the public notice here, and first time I actually learned that a nursery school was proposed for this application was from the November 13th meeting, when a play area was added to the plan. So I'm wondering, why wasn't that part of the description in the application? Why wasn't that in the public notice for the application?
The relevant term under Milburn's ordinance and for purposes of the planning board application and proceeding is house of worship. And shul does not appear in Milburn's ordinance. no other term, whether it's related to the Jewish religion or any other religion in town, is used or of relevance in the ordinance other than house of worship. And that's what was used to describe this proposed use in the notice, consistent with how it's handled and contemplated in the zoning.
She did ask a question regarding the use
Yeah,
of
so
it.
the answer is we noticed for a house of worship, and all of these other uses are completely incidental. I mean, if we didn't notice there's gonna be a kitchen, we didn't notice there's gonna be a bathroom, we didn't notice there's gonna be an elevator. These are all incidental uses and integral parts of our religious mission. I've testified to that about 6 times, several times tonight.
Well, wouldn't you think members of the public would be interested in knowing that a nursery school would be operating at the property in addition to a Hebrew school and a house of worship? That there is multiple uses at this property?
You asking me a legal question or a community relations question? Legal question I'm not gonna address, but community relations, you and your clients were well aware of exactly the square footage and everything that's happening. Some of, I don't know if she's your client or not, is posting all over the place, everything that we're doing or planning on doing. So the plans have been online and 10 days before the application, the first thing. And in the plans, the rooms are clearly marked. And the short answer to your question is the public was well aware of everything that we contemplated doing in the building based on the marking of the rooms.
So I'm just going to object to the notice of the application. It didn't include any language referring to the fact that there was a nursery school offered as part of this application. A nursery school is a significant part of this application. It's taking up most of, almost like a third or a fourth of the building is being occupied at this nursery school. It's not mentioned at all in the application materials. It's not mentioned at all in the public notice to the public. And pretty sure that most of the public here only learned of this nursery school use, which is in addition to the house of worship, from attending these meetings. So I'm sure there's a lot of members of the public that aren't here that might be interested in the fact that a nursery school is operating at the property in addition to a school. So I object to the public notice for the application, and I ask that the board ask the applicant to renotice.
So certainly the objector's attorney is well within her rights to object to the form and substance of the notice. My response would only be that house of worship is the conditional use that we're seeking approval for. As the rabbi correctly stated, it's very clear from all of our submissions exactly with a breakdown by room of what the proposed use is. This also has been substantial testimony in public, being broadcast over Zoom. There have been leaflets and pamphlets circulating and a bunch of other means of making the public very well aware. In addition to the fact that I'm sure longtime residents of Millburn are also very well aware that virtually every single existing house of worship in town conducts associated daycare services, educational services, and have been for many, many years. And that's a part and parcel of nearly all of the existing houses of worship in town and has been for a number of years.
Just to respond to that, and there is a significant amount of the space for this building that's being occupied for school, and the applicant hasn't provided much details about that school because they're still developing the application, and it's just something that's been developing over the course of these hearings. It's not mentioned at all in the plans. I think anyone could have assumed that an identification of classroom on a floor plan refers to perhaps weekly religious education classes, which is something very different from a nursery school. And I think that it's important that the public have notice of all of the uses that are proposed for this property. The property is zoned as a conditional use for a house of worship, and there's also a conditional use for school that's allowed on this property. So objector's position is that there's dual uses on this property. There's a nursery school and there's a house of worship, and it should be in the public notice.
Okay, proceed.
My advice is, the board attorney is that the standard for notice is that it has to put a reasonable person on notice to sufficient enough so that they would be inclined to go ask questions if they want to learn, right? Just given that house of worship was included in the notice, and given that, as council stated, nursery schools, educational programs are often an accessory use to house of worship use. I believe the notice would be sufficient, provided it stated that a house of worship is being proposed, it didn't, right?
Yeah, yes, and also as an initial matter, as is usually done before the board accepted jurisdiction, is there was a finding and a determination as to the adequacy of the notice, which is certainly part of a record. But yes, to answer your specific question, yeah, the notice does call out house of worship and identifies it as a conditional use.
Given that that's the case, I don't believe the applicant needs to renotice.
Council, I do have a question though. If this nursery school requires state regulations and we enforce those state regulations, would that not, how do we monitor?
I don't believe
state?
I don't believe the Township of Milburn, certainly not the Planning Board of Milburn, enforces state education.
Not the planning board, but the town itself.
I don't believe the town is either.
It
Quite
would be
frankly,
the State Department of Education that would take jurisdiction.
more than likely, yes. So, that's my advice. I don't believe they need to renotice. I don't think it's necessary.
Well, I just say that, there's not that many people that you have to renotice to. Notice is jurisdictional. I don't believe the board has jurisdiction over the application to consider if the notice is sufficient. So, it's our position that it should be renoticed. All right, so you're not requiring any notice, is that it, Madam
I
Chair?
think I don't feel that to take any additional action at this point.
Okay, Rabbi, there was prior testimony regarding stormwater and a lot of concerns expressed about effects on drainage and flooding. Would the applicant agree to a condition that if this application is approved, it would ensure there's no negative effects on drainage and flooding to adjoining properties?
No, I mean, that's a completely subjective standard. The applicant is required to comply with the applicable stormwater management regulations, both under the local ordinance and those that are imposed by the DEP at the state. We will comply with what's legally required.
I think that's a fairly common condition that, you won't affect drainage of nearby properties. So the applicant won't agree to that condition?
Are you aware that we are in fact, and I at 1 Jefferson is the nearby property that would be affected solely? Are you aware of that?
Well, this is my turn to ask
So,
questions.
yeah, Rabbi,
Um,
you would have to answer the question, not with a question, please.
What was your question? I'm sorry.
Would the applicant agree to a condition that it won't negatively affect drainage of adjoining properties if this application is approved? I think that's a fairly common condition in a lot of resolutions that I see. No?
No.
And what's the anticipated length of construction for this project? Do you know?
No.
Do you know if the applicant would agree to a condition that it would provide notice to the township and the adjoining residences on the commencement of construction or the construction schedule?
I do know that the ordinance requires that there be a pre-construction meeting with the township engineer and other representatives of the township before commencing construction. So certainly we'll comply with those requirements. But that, again, an additional kind of general notice to the public is not required. I don't believe appropriate, or I think it's an unnecessary burden on the applicant.
Can I ask our engineer, is construction fencing required during the time of construction?
Development, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And certainly the applicant will comply with all those regulations, all those requirements.
Just looking for my notes. I believe I asked you a few questions about cooking on the property. You said that cooking would be done in the kitchen listed on the floor plans and would be used during religious services. Is that right?
I had never said that.
Okay. When do you anticipate that the kitchen will be used? How often?
Couldn't tell you, as needed. I don't know. Standing here today, I could not tell you that.
And do you have it anticipate how many persons might be served with food, like over the course of a year? How many events you might have as far as planning?
I think
No.
essentially this has been asked.
Well, I think the witness gave testimony that as many as 200 to 250 persons might attend services at the property and then also be served food at the property that would be cooked on the property. So I was trying to understand, you know, how often that would occur and what other cooking would be done on the property. There was reference in some of the testimony to, you know, weekly meals. Are there going to be weekly meals at the property?
I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not aware of a single requirement under either the ordinance or the general municipal ordinances in Milburn that puts any restrictions on when a property owner can use its kitchen. And whether the neighbors happen to approve of when this facility uses its kitchen and when it doesn't use its kitchen is not relevant to the board's consideration of this application. We're not required to take a straw poll of the neighbors to determine when they think it's okay for this particular facility to use its kitchen. And repeated questioning along these lines is simply fruitless and a waste of time.
Well, if I might respond to that, you know, I think everyone can agree that this is going to be a pretty drastic change in use of this application, this property. This property has always been residential. So, you know, it's a big change in the use of the property. There's neighbors nearby and they're concerned about, you know, what's going to happen on the property and how it's going to affect their quality of life. And the fact that there's going to be a large amount of cooking on the property and how that might affect adjoining residences, I think is something that this board could consider. It could consider conditions to try to address some of those concerns. So that's the reason why I'm asking the questions.
Understood, but I think I think the comment was that you asked multiple questions regarding the use of the kitchen.
Right, and I don't think I ever got an answer to that last question. That's why I was coming back to it.
Okay.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Are there going to be weekly meals served at the property?
I refuse to answer that question. It's not your business. The board has no jurisdiction.
You could just say you have no
Excuse me.
response, Rabbi.
Excuse me, members of the public. I'm sorry, Madam
Go
Chair.
ahead, please.
I'm not gonna say no, because no means.
No, Rabbi, please,
Rabbi,
please.
This is a quasi judicial proceeding, okay? This is almost a courtroom, okay? You wouldn't do this in court, please don't do it here. Okay, everybody here is trying to take in testimony. The board, these are all volunteers. None of these people get paid to be here, okay? So please be respectful of them and of yourselves because frankly, you're not gonna hear the testimony if you keep chattering. So please, just be respectful. That's all we're asking, please.
So your question was, were there weekly meals? And I believe you are not
That's
providing a response?
To answer more fully, I testify that I have no way of predicting or knowing what the need will be standing here today. And I further say, and I'm happy to testify to that if we, meaning the people who use the congregation, perceive that there is a social need, a religious need of any sort, whether it's attending the service or people who might need food, this all falls within the rubric of a house of worship. And I am not prepared to have you or anybody else tell us what our religious mission should be or is. And if you have someone to testify contrarily, bring that person.
Okay, thank you for the response.
So you won't be answering the question. It sounds like you don't know.
I think I just answered the question.
I don't believe you did, but that's the extent of my questioning. So I have no further questioning of this witness at this time.
Okay, thank you. Because it is 9:30, we've been sitting for 2 hours, we will allow a 5-minute recess for folks. If anybody needs to stretch, we will come back and continue with questions from the public. And I will ask if any question of yours has already been asked during the last 2 hours, please don't re-ask that question. So as soon as you hear one of your questions asked, please strike it from your list and we welcome new original questions.
Right. And Madam Chair, real quick, if I could. I know a number of people that joined the audience. If anybody is represented by Ms. Dory, I said at the beginning, the MLUL, Municipal Land Use Law, requires that if you're represented by counsel, all questions have to come from your attorney. So again, if you're represented by her, you can't ask questions. All right, just want to make that clear to everybody.
Thank you. Yes, we're good. Okay, thanks. We're back in session. Continuing the public questions or questions from the public for the rabbi regarding testimony on operations. So if folks weren't in the room when I mentioned it earlier, if you have questions that are new that we haven't just received in the last few hours and regarding the rabbi's testimony, we invite you to come forward. You would state your name and address, and please do spell your name. Again, our stenographer is not here, but we do have this recording mechanism. So please just say name, spell it, if it's at all complicated, and an address, and then you may ask questions. So we welcome members of the public.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'll just point out also, this is for questions only. There will be an opportunity at the end of the proceedings for members of the public to make comments. You'll be sworn under oath and you can provide testimony. Again, just please try to keep it to questions. And, sometimes there's a little bit of a factual predicate, but I'm trying to keep that to a minimum.
My name is Jeffrey Feld, F-E-L-D. I live at 11 Alexander Lane, Short Hills, New Jersey. Just want to have some various brief questions. Based on security plans, would the applicant share his security plans with the local police department? You say you wouldn't share it with the planning board or the other people. Would you share it with the local police?
Is that a question?
Yes, that was
Yes.
the question.
We'll certainly have conversations with the police. I'm sure we will. I don't know.
I didn't ask the question. Would you answer yes or no? Would you agree to share your security plans with the local police department?
My answer stands. We will have conversation with the police. If they would like to have something more detailed, there's no question we'll cooperate with them. But I can't tell you right now what they're going to be comfortable with or ask.
I didn't ask that. I said, would you share I asked a yes or no question. Can you direct him to answer my question in a yes or no
Okay,
form?
thank you, Mr. Feld. Okay.
I think the witness should make a good faith effort to give as fulsome and responsive an answer as he can.
The question
I
was,
don't think
would you
should be-
share your plan? And he said, we will have discussions. So
Yes.
that is not a question, yes, we will share our plan with them, or no, we will not share our plan with them. I think that we're looking for a yes or no response to that question.
No.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you. Is this the applicant's third application to a Milburn Land Use Board to establish a house of worship in Milburn?
Is this a third application? I
I could help you with the dates.
think it's our fourth. Why do I think it's our fourth? I think it's our fourth. Yeah, it's our fourth.
Okay.
All right, it's your fourth. Are you in current litigation about one recent application that was denied from a different land use board in December 2022?
That is irrelevant to this application in front of us.
All right. How many stories is this building going to be, including the basement?
3.
3?
Excuse me. That's a loaded question in that there are very specific definitions and requirements under the ordinance as to story and height, that information is provided on our plans, and that's information that the architect calculated in preparing his plans and will testify to.
Okay.
There's a specific meaning as to story and height that we have to comply with under the ordinance. And this lay witness should not be testifying to.
Okay.
All right, but that'd be a question for later on, when you look back at the notice, when it says a 2-story building, whether a rational person that lives in a community.
Thank you.
All right. When did you add the playground? Was it after the public notice?
I don't recall.
If you looked at exhibit, I think C or D, was that after the notice?
Does your answer still stand?
Yeah, I don't recall.
Just want to look at it. At your last testimony, not tonight, but at the other meeting, you talked about being discriminated, that other places of worship do not comply with the zoning law. At the first hearing, there was a handout given to people in public and it listed various other religious establishments. How many of those religious establishments existed before 1947 in our third state constitution?
I'm not aware that there was any sort of handout that's been entered into the record and is part of these proceedings.
I was just gonna ask.
Agree,
Mr.
the board has not received any handouts.
Well, I can tell you the public received this on September.
Yeah, we all got it.
They were handed out.
I have not received
This
it.
is questions, it's not statements, it's not presentation of
All right,
evidence.
all right, but he's talked about discrimination. And he's been comparing other places of houses of worship in the community. I'd like to know, when he says discriminating, of these other establishments, how many were established before 1947 with our state constitution? How many were established before 1975 with the enactment of the municipal land use law, which is what's governing this whole
Does
proceeding?
he have a question for me?
Yeah, you said, explain, you said you've been discriminated against.
You're asking him when
You're
other houses of worship were,
No, basically,
built?
I want to know the basis, because he made a factual statement that he's been discriminated. I'd like to know the basis to understand that, how he's been discriminated against all the pre-existing places, houses of worship.
I'm not sure what exactly is your question?
It sounded like the question was, you made a claim that you've been discriminated against. What is the basis for that claim?
Yeah, I reject the assumption of the question. I've never made the claim. I have not made that claim in these proceedings.
I was merely stating what I perceived as.
No, I thank you, but I have not made that claim in these proceedings. What I did say, it's not a question that you asked. What I did say was that we are the only application, and that's how I started my testimony last time, were it to be approved by the board, that would be in fact in compliance today with the ordinance that stands today. I stand by that.
All right, thank you.
okay, thank you. Other members of the public?
Christine Best, 15 Fairfield Terrace, Short Hills. Good evening, everybody. I had to drop a lot of my questions, so if you, a little patient, I apologize. My whole thing got messed up here. Rabbi, what is your relationship with Harry Gross? Is he an investor in the High Center and any nearby adjacent properties?
I'm not sure if your question has to be regarding his testimony.
It's a question for the rabbi because it affects the entire, overview of the area. I want to understand what his relationship. He's an investor in the High Center, I believe, from the documents I've read. So I just want to ask him if that's true.
Was that name mentioned in the application documentation?
It's on record for the High Center if you look up public records and tax records. So it should be on the application. I would imagine that it is.
It's not within the scope of this testimony.
But it is, because I want to understand what type of heavy-hitting investors are behind you.
He has not testified about the investors behind
Yeah,
the,
he did
excuse me, I'd like to address.
I'm
the board.
sorry.
Go ahead. What was it?
We were all here for his testimony. There's a transcript of his testimony from the last time. There's been no testimony within the scope of his questioning and answering with regard to any investors, any particular members of his congregation. It's not been part of his testimony.
And Ms. Best is it? I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes. So again, as I was stating to Ms. Dory earlier, the questions have to be relevant to what the board is legally allowed to consider.
Okay,
We're talking about the development on this property. If you have a question.
I'm very clear on that. Yeah, no, I just want to at least explain to you, so maybe you could reconsider what I'm trying to say. I would like to say that I don't agree with your
Ms. Best,
state.
I'm sorry to keep interrupting you. The problem-
Well, I'm trying to, so the
This is-
other
we're
attorney
not-
was able to actually
She's
explain
an
to you her
attorney. She's
reason.
not,
So
I'm
I'm
sorry,
not
I'm
allowed
not
to be pro, like,
you're not
per
allowed to
se.
testify. right now.
I'm not testifying, I'm asking a question.
You're explaining, you're
So
testifying.
I can't be a pro se attorney I can't do that. I'm not allowed. Is that
You're
true?
not
Is
allowed
that
to
true?
give testimony. You remember.
I'm not giving testimony. I'm trying to explain to you, just like the
That's-
attorney did,
that's
the
testimony.
reasoning for the question to have the
But that's
question be
still
allowed.
testimony.
Okay, so it's allowed for some people, but not others. Okay, I
If
understand.
you're an
Okay.
attorney, yes.
So that was actually asked. So that wasn't his testimony.
Ms. Best, could you please ask a question?
I just did. So I can't ask about any investors, even though he said there were multiple private investors in his
I don't
testimony.
see how it's relevant to this application.
What?
I don't see how that's relevant to what the board is legally allowed to consider.
Okay.
Doesn't the board get a list of the? if it's over
We have a
certain
list of
threshold?
over a certain percentage in the
Isn't that
application,
provided in the,
Yes.
in the introduction.
so if that's the case, if that's part of the record, why would I question you regarding that not being given?
It says there are no individuals or entities that have a 10% or greater ownership, which is.
Okay.
Can I ask any names about congregates of the organization? Am I allowed to ask that?
I don't think.
How is that,
I'm asking you if I'm allowed to ask
I'm
it.
trying to understand how would it be relevant to what the board is allowed to consider? That's my-
It's relevant so you can understand a holistic viewpoint of whether there will be an expansion, as there are multiple LLCs in the area compounded very closely to that location at 165 Old Church Hills Road. And I think it's very relevant.
I don't see how it relates to the development on the property. Right?
I'm not going to try to argue with
It's
you
not
because I
something
don't,
that he's
I'm not,
testified to either.
Something like that. if-
well, he did testify to not, that
Bring
he
up
wasn't,
That type of question, is the testimony portion of these proceedings a more appropriate
Right,
time to-
when there is an opportunity for public
to
comment,
ask a
that would be.
general question?
oh, okay, well, because he did testify to that he had no affiliations with anything such as that before. So I was just asking for him to reiterate that through multiple questions, but I guess I can't.
Counselor, do you have any objection there? That's the applicant's
What
standpoint.
is it specifically you'd like to ask?
Oh, well, maybe I'll give a more general question. Maybe this would be more appropriate. Are you engaged or do you have any associates, friends, families, investors, congregates, partners, or acquaintances involved in any covert land acquisition nearby proximity to your home at 1 Jefferson or 165 Old Short Hills Road?
So if the question is, do I object to that question? Yes.
Okay.
Not only the question, but the characterization of the motivations behind it.
I don't believe it's appropriate.
That's fine. I'm just asking, not an attorney. I wanted to understand your motivation in selecting a property in a very bucolic, quiet residential area. May I ask that question?
You can ask questions,
Okay.
but
I don't want to offend anybody. I'm just trying to ask questions. I'm not skilled like
look,
you
I'm
are.
not trying to be combative with you at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay.
The board, this is a judicial, quasi-judicial
very aware of
procedure.
that.
There are rules and regulations. When you start saying bucolic, and you're essentially testifying, right? You
okay.
understand that
Mhm.
we're running into this. Please,
Okay.
I'm just asking you if you could just keep.
Okay, sorry, as I understand, the township offered you alternative properties to build your house of worship, such as the Rimback Moving Company property and the old Chanticleer property prior to engaging in an agreement with the township. Is this true or false?
No,
It's true, or no, it's false?
no, it's false.
Okay, so it's not true. Okay, thank you. What was your reasoning to build this house of worship in a very residential area versus an area that has more accessibility downtown, for example?
What is that question? What does that question mean?
I'm trying to understand, your vision and your mission. Okay, you talked about that in your last testimony. So I'm trying to understand, why you would select a residential area that's on quiet streets that's more tricky to develop in versus a place like the Annie Says property where you have access to the train, neighborhoods, it's easy in and out access. Why you would select something that would be more challenging to acquire?
I don't know, every part of that question is simply untrue, so I don't know where to start.
No, I'm just asking you why you chose that over that.
So you say it's a quiet street, it's not a quiet street, ask the people on Park, there's 20,000 cars there every day. You say that Annie Says is easier, Annie Says it's not legal to have a house of worship. The short answer is because it's legal and because that's the only place the township allows us to have a house of worship is right next door at 165 Old Church Road.
So is there a reason why you waited for over 20 years to acquire this property versus just having it somewhere else?
Again, questions about this proposed application, not
Okay.
on why you might have taken prior actions.
The motive, frankly, the motivations of the applicant are somewhat irrelevant.
Okay,
It's,
all right, I'm going
we're
off that.
talking about whether or not,
Yep.
again, the applicant has met its burden of proof to establish an entitlement to site. Okay?
And please correct me if I make any further mistakes. I have, prior to demolishing the property at 165 Old Short Hills Road, prior to demolishing the property, did you know that there were deed restrictions of the equivalent for 1 Jefferson for at 165? Were you aware of that when you made the decision to demolish?
Again, it expressed my objection to the nature of the applicability of private restrictive covenants in deeds, and I think the case law is clear that that's not within the purview of the planning board.
And not only that, but it's not, we don't, it's a question you have to ask the owner of the property, it's not me. And I didn't,
No, I was
I
asking
didn't file
the
the
owner.
permit, and you have to, it's not a question to me, totally irrelevant.
And Ms. Beston, just real quick, so these covenants, restrictive easements, that's an issue for the, full-on court to decide, not for the planning board to decide, right? That's only,
Okay.
the Superior Court can really,
Okay.
put through a deed restriction. And as I understand it, I could be wrong, but as I understand it, again, the covenants that you may be referencing don't actually prevent the proposed use of the property.
They, I don't know what to say to that because I'm not allowed to respond to you, so I'm sorry.
I'm just telling you, I'm just putting it out there. I'm not asking for
Yeah,
a response. I'm just telling you.
okay, no, thank you for telling me that. I appreciate it. So, I just wanted to understand,
You do understand that the High Center, the applicant, doesn't own 165, and High Center, the applicant, did not apply for the building, for the demolition permit. You understand that? It was not me. And I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
you were directing other entities, correct?
Don't direct anybody.
Do they direct you?
I'm not even gonna respond to that.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to understand that, if you understood that, deed restrictions. Were you aware that, there's a riparian stream going through your property when you decided to do this application?
I don't know what riparian stream is.
It's just, it's just a waterway going through the property, and you aware of that?
I don't, no, the answer is no, I don't know what the term is.
Ms. Cuss, with respect, I think that might be a question better reserved for their engineer, the civil engineer, as opposed
No, well, I
to.
wanted to ask him if he was aware of it. I already spoke with the civil engineer about it. Thank you. So, okay, I'm sorry, I'm just going a little bit around. I apologize. I'm not as organized as everybody else is. So you talked about, there's no difference between a shul, or you don't understand the difference between a temple, synagogue, or a shul, or Chabad. Isn't Chabad a specific denomination of the religion when that's characterized that way? Is there a reason why you wouldn't want to say that,
No, I stand by my previous answer.
that you don't know?
No, that was not the answer, actually.
I think you said you didn't know, or
No,
didn't
I
matter.
said there is no difference. I actually said
There's
there
no
is no difference.
difference. So there's no difference between somebody who goes to a Reform temple versus, in terms of the traditions, then somebody who goes to Chabad. There's no difference in walkability. There's no difference.
Are you asking about the
You're saying there's
beliefs?
no difference.
Maybe I don't understand your question.
Although,
I think you said there's no difference. I was
although I
just
will say, I do
establishing that.
recall that there was fairly extensive testimony that the rabbi offered the first time around, with it comparing and contrasting, strictly Orthodox
Right.
versus Reformed, and there was a fairly extensive explanation from the rabbi as to that very question.
Yes, and excuse me for asking that again, but the reason why I asked it was because you contradicted what you said in the previous testimony, and I wanted to make sure I was clear on what you were saying. So I'm going to take this testimony as what you're saying.
I don't agree that I contradict myself.
Okay, well, maybe watch the tape again. So you stated in your earlier testimony, and I'm not quoting you, your congregants are not traditional Orthodox, but regular liberal Jewish people that want an Orthodox place to learn and worship. So if that is the case, then why is there a need to expand this house of worship, particularly when you stated your congregants are not local? What does this serve to the existing residents of this town?
I never said my congregants are not local. And frankly, you inquiring into their need for a house of worship is out of order.
I mean, I think that you have to establish a need when you're bringing in a commercial business, and this is, while it's not a variance, it's still subject to approval by the planning board. It's a conditional use application.
Not only is that testimony, it's an opinion and it's legally incorrect with regard to a permitted conditional use.
Ms. Vestager, please, questions?
Is there a reason why you decided to engage an architect that designs very modern, more industrial looking structures versus selecting a home that a sort of a home facade so it fits into the neighborhood, likening it to sort of Temple Sinai and Summit, or also trying to think Shari's Tefillah, another beautiful temple. Is there a reason why you didn't want to have the architecture fit into the neighborhood to sort of accommodate more of a residential aspect? Is there a design reason for that, a design need?
I suppose there might be a question reserved for the architect who's going to be coming up next.
Excuse me?
It might be a question.
Well,
that
no, I
reserved-
wanted to
Yes, why
understand
he
his
selected this
motivation, not
architect.
an architect does what they're told. They design to what they're told.
So, okay, thank you. We're not going to do testimony, but so
Yeah,
your
I don't
question
think
was,
the
was
design of the
there?
building is the board's purview. And I don't think you should be asking questions about it.
Well, I think you made a statement. The reason why I was asking it is you talk about inclusivity and being a good neighbor. And so I think a lot of people in this
I don't
room are.
recall that
You
conversation.
think, statements like you think, that's a statement, that's not a question. Please, questions.
The questions regarding the operational use as he testified to.
Exactly.
So we're only allowed to ask operational use questions?
About his testimony, he didn't testify to the
Okay,
the
no, you said
architecture
operational
selection.
use questions. That's why I'm confused. I'm just getting really confused. I'm sorry.
Relevant.
Maybe it's the surgery hat. I apologize. So when you have Sukkot, like you had recently, this year at your address at 1 Jefferson, I'm assuming you'll be doing that and carrying on that tradition at 165. Will you not be having that under a tent? Because you testified earlier that you don't know if you're going to be having structures, but that's a big part of what the religious use is.
Oh, is that what Jeff?
I think
meant by
so.
Temporary structures.
That's what I think they meant by
Oh, I
temporary
see. Yes, we'll
structures.
still be erecting a sukkah every year for about a week or 2 weeks.
Okay, so it will be coming down on like the one at 1 Jefferson.
That's generally what happens with the sukkah, yes.
Thank you so much for the time. And I apologize for being not the greatest.
It's all good.
Any other members of the public have questions?
Yeah, Ted Coons, in Short Hills, Old Short Hills.
Could I ask you to spell your name just
Yep,
for?
Kundtc. First name's Ted, T-E-D.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm not sure we covered this. I thought we did. Because it's sort of an issue of transparency. And I was just wondering if, your investors that are helping to finance the acquisition and build out the school and the religious center.
Sir,
You talked about-
we just went over this with the last.
And I thought he said they were one and the same. There were investors that were also investing in this and also
It's-
investing in
It's
the,
not a relevant question for the board's consideration right now. It's prejudicial.
who's it relevant for? Because it goes to the long-term plan of the rabbi that he has for the neighborhood. Isn't that what you're?
What the board can consider is whether or not the applicant has met its burden of proving an entitlement to site plan approval. Okay? What investors do, if we're talking about this particular property, not what's going to happen in the future, what's going to happen on this particular property, not outside of this.
But aren't you interested in what he may plan to do with this property and other properties around the neighborhood? Is that not an interest of this
Plans with
committee?
This property is one thing, but off-site, I don't believe that's really relevant.
Isn't your mission to really can't carry out your mandate for the planning, your master plan?
Sir, in this.
And in 101, the objective of objective 101, the first mission that you have is to protect the
Sir.
character of the established residential neighborhood and encourage land use and development
Sir,
at an appropriate scale and density.
sir,
Does not that cover the future of this piece of this
so
development?
the master plan is a more, I hate to call it a mission statement, but it's essentially a mission statement that's supposed to guide legislation, not, that doesn't directly influence how this board,
Or it doesn't
in this
influence how
particular
you
case-
vote or think? Is that correct?
it depends on the context, but I'm not going to get into this with you, because quite frankly, it's far afield and it's not relevant to what the board is to be considering right
Well,
now.
We're just-
I would like to provide a little bit of context by way of explanation. Yes, we are the planning board, and we develop the master plan and revise it every 10 years, as we are
That's what I was
required to do by
referencing.
the municipal land use law. So yes, you are correct in that. The master plan, we then submit to our elected officials, the township committee. They review the plan and they may say, oh yeah, we like that idea, we like this part, we agree with that. And now we will change the ordinance to reflect the master plan. And we as the board, now we have to obey our municipal ordinance, of which this application is a conforming application, conditional use.
Then
So-
does this
so-
go forward to the township council after you guys vote?
No.
You don't, it doesn't. So you really should be interested in the long-range
We
plan.
absolutely are. And we make recommendations to the elected officials who then choose.
Well, I was trying to get to the point, what is the long-range plan of the Chai Center? What is his long-range plan?
Right,
was
but
the-
that is
was the
not
gist of
what-
the,
I
that's not what
understand
you can, that's not what you can think about.
We are not weighing in on whether we agree with another plan on other potential properties. No, we are weighing in on whether
Okay,
this
you're not, okay.
potential this application
This particular.
complies with the ordinance as it stands today.
All right, okay, so it's very narrow.
Yes.
Got it, okay.
Properties, if something happens to them, that would be another application.
Correct.
Exactly.
That would come back in the future, and, if there's some, plan where 6 properties are,
He wants to build housing on all these.
or whatever, or anything like
They would
that, that
absolutely,
would come back to the planning board for that particular application. So it's not over,
Right.
if that happens, but this one is just.
Well, it's like the Trojan horse. Once it gets in, you're really kind of stuck, guys.
Thank you. That's an opinion and that's not
I'm going to strike
this.
that. Yes.
Okay. Questions for the rabbi based on his testimony? Good evening.
Thank you. Jean Pasternak. Do I have to give my address too?
Please.
If you could.
342 Hobart Avenue.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions regarding parking, traffic. So you made some testimony and there were also questions regarding parking at the current location and then also how that's going to be handled in the new location at 165. So you said, I believe in your testimony that you can park 40 cars in the current lot. And we also heard that there's overflow and it's into the surrounding streets and neighborhoods. Given the space available in the new parking area, do you anticipate that there will be overflow into the streets, given the numbers of people that you discussed at High Holy Days and so forth?
We don't anticipate, no.
Okay, so I'm asking you, do you think that the current parking lot is going to accommodate all the parking that's going to be needed?
As proposed,
Okay.
I think it will accommodate, yes.
Okay. The new plan that shows the driveway being moved across from Park. My question, I guess, is, do you believe that that's going to end up resulting in a need for a traffic signal, given that it's going to be like a 4-way intersection?
It's a question for our traffic people, and they have testified and will testify.
But they didn't actually testify, or no one has, about this latest plan that was submitted that moved the driveway. So I'm
I
not sure how
believe,
that's.
council,
gonna work.
will we have testimony when we have the,
Well, there
Updated
was
plan.
actually extensive testimony contemplating that the intersection would
Contemplating
be
it, yes.
redesigned, and there was actually a follow-up subsequent report that was issued by the board's consultant commenting on additional thoughts and input based on that redesign. We are as we've explained, required to submit, full revised plans that reflect that change in design.
Okay.
But we're not proposing a traffic light. Certainly, the board's traffic consultant can weigh in as to whether or not that would be required here. But in any event, it would certainly be beyond the scope of this witness's expertise.
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure who is going to address that, so that's why I'm asking it now.
Thank you.
Okay. The other question I have is, would you, given your operation, given the testimony of everybody combined and you being the operational head, would you consider leaving the existing driveway where it is and organize everything around that rather than move the driveway?
I'm not sure what you mean, the existing driveway.
There's an existing driveway
At
that comes out
165
onto
Old Short Hills Road.
Yes, that comes onto Old Short Hills Road.
I don't
Would you be willing to leave that there?
I don't
or-
believe the town's experts would be happy with that. No, the answer is no.
Okay. And would you consider having one driveway onto Parsonage Hill Road so that all traffic enters and exits through that? And perhaps consider that a more safe way to deal with the increased traffic? Have you thought about that, or have you discussed that with your experts?
You're asking for my expert testimony on traffic, and that's not.
Not really. I'm just saying, have you, as the operations head, have you discussed that, or would you consider that?
No.
Okay.
So my question is it on the rabbi's testimony that you asked the questions, or these are whole separate questions not based on his testimony? What is allowed?
I can't hear what she
The
said.
question she asked is, are questions permitted if it's not on the rabbi's testimony?
Well, it's supposed to be relevant to what he testified to, as well as relevant to the application.
Well, if there's, like,
He's the head of
witnesses
operations.
testifying about operations, are
Right.
members of the public able to ask questions about operations of the proposed site, even if he didn't testify to it? I'm, for my own education, I'm just curious.
I suppose to an extent. I mean, it really depends how far afield you want to get from what he's brought up. It's hard for me to say as a general matter, but on a case by case, would have to be
Yeah, I
judged.
mean,
But nonetheless, I believe, as you stated, this would be a question better reserved for the traffic engineer, who I believe did testify and was given.
There's a new plan, though, with a new driveway that hasn't had public hasn't been exposed to it until just recently.
I
So-
believe what we agreed was that, because you're correct, we sort of received it and the board asked some questions, but we
Yes.
said we would reserve the right for Mr. Vishio to come back and
Okay.
answer questions from the public.
So that's the
because you
plan?
hadn't had the opportunity
Okay.
to see it.
Okay. I
So,
didn't know that
exactly.
until right now, so thank you.
Apology, I think that was covered at the last meeting.
That's correct, Counselor. Your
Yeah.
traffic engineer will come back. Great. Okay, great. So you can ask those
Okay.
questions at that point.
Thank you. Would you be willing to omit the playground?
no.
Okay. Would you ever consider having any residential component to your campus that you're building for your congregants if they required housing?
Are you asking me about our plan that's in front of the board right now?
Yes.
There is no residential component to the plan.
I'm asking if you would consider that in the future with the campus that you're proposing.
I think if they were to, then that would have to come back before the
Okay.
board, yeah.
Okay. And just the last one, have you or any of your associates related to the High Center approached the owners of any adjacent properties to ask them if they would be interested in selling to you or your associates or private investors associated with the High Center?
Again, that's not really relevant to the proposed application for use.
I think it is, but thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Going once, going twice. All right, you're out of here. Thank you, Rabbi. Yeah, I'll let you go ahead. Yeah.
So I realize that the hour is drawing late, but I do also believe we're not at the end of our time. I would like to take advantage of all of the time that we've been allotted. Our architect is here. I'm hopeful that we've heard extensive testimony now directly through the rabbi, but also through indirectly through the traffic expert with regard to the specific hours and activities that are going to be conducted throughout this facility, through the kitchen, through the the lower level, the upper level, the Hebrew school, the nursery school. Those are all labeled on the plans. That's all been testified to. So I'm hopeful that the scope of testimony and questions for the architect will be relatively narrow, but we'll see how that goes. But would love the opportunity to get started with our architect if we could.
Please.
Danny?
Yes, yeah.
So was he sworn in already, or do we gotta?
We have not sworn you in
I
yet.
don't know if Steve did a mass swearing in the beginning. Or
Yeah.
That's what I did. Okay. All right, sir.
Hi.
Put your right hand raised. All right, do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, great. And I'll let your, Mr. Levy Vaudier on your
Yeah,
qualifications.
so can you just briefly acquaint the board and the members of the public with your educational background and
Could you
professional
provide your
experience?
name for the
Oh, yeah,
record?
my apologies, yeah. I think you said it already, but just again.
Yes, Daniel Dubinet, Dubinett.
Thank you. Just want to make sure it's picked up.
And if you could just, if you could review briefly your educational background and professional experience.
Thank you. Syracuse University, undergraduate degree, and then Masters of Architecture from NJIT. I graduated in 1995, and I received my license in 2001.
Is your license still current?
It is.
Have you been qualified to testify as an expert in architectural design, not only here in Milburn by the planning board and zoning board, but also other planning and zoning boards in the area?
Yes, I've appeared before the zoning board in Milburn quite often, Essex County. My practice is located in Short Hills, so I've been practicing architecture for 23, almost 24 years. So yes.
I'd like to offer this gentleman as an expert in architectural design, if I may.
Welcome. We will hear you as such.
Thank you.
Daniel, you did prepare the elevations and floor plans that were submitted as part of our application that have been on file?
I did.
I was hoping that you could walk the board through those plans, but before you do, if I could just lay the groundwork a bit. As I'm sure the board's well aware, but just maybe perhaps for the edification of the members of the public, there are no special design requirements or specifications or stipulations that apply either to houses of worship generally or this particular property. This particular property, 165 Old Short Hills Road, is not designated as a historic landmark under the Milburn ordinance, although other properties in town are. This one is not. It's also not located within a historic district that's been designated and recognized under Milburn's ordinance. There are others. This is not part of one of those. And so for that reason, there are no particular requirements or guidelines that the applicant either had to comply with or seek waivers from with regard to the design. So I certainly want and invite Daniel to go through his design, what the building will look like, and what have you. But I just ask that, folks involved be mindful that there are no specific requirements with regard to what the design must include, must include or must not include. But with that, by way of general background, Daniel, if you could take the board through your plans, please.
Yes, I'd like to just get set up real quickly, if I may. I prepared, you all have the drawings and renderings that we submitted, but I have some additional information, so I'd like to mark it as an exhibit.
Well, why don't you explain what it is, if you could?
Okay. So yeah, it's pretty much a little bit more information. So there's some Google imagery. Let me just roll through it.
So is this like a revised plan set, or is it just a
It's
separate?
not
exhibit?
revised. It's just so I could communicate the plans and elevations and the site in a different format.
Okay, so
So no new design elements, but maybe some additional information.
So what is it? It's photograph?
I have.
Yeah. Okay.
Read through it.
So Google Earth image, I have the zoning table.
Okay, so it's
I
it's
have
not
our
a,
site plan.
it's not a set of plans in and of itself. It's a bunch of different things.
It's a bunch of different things with the plans. I figured it'd be easy to go through the plans
so-
individually.
Eileen, I hate to lean on you, but do you know what
We're
it
on
is?
A7. This
Oh,
one
look at
is
you. You already know. Okay, so this would be A7. This would be an architect. Let's just call it architect's exhibit.
Yes,
Sound good? Okay.
thank you.
So do you have one that I can mark for identification and give to Ms. Davitt so they can, and
Yeah.
also I will stipulate that the applicant will provide an electronic copy so that it will be available on the website
Thank you.
and available for, further analysis and
And can
questions.
it be projected tonight?
Yes.
Yes, fantastic.
But-
Looks like there's a stacked copy there. Could they-
Yes.
Yeah, I made
Follow
18
along.
copies.
I think that's enough.
Yeah, what I'm saying is,
Well,
we hand them out,
Yeah.
follow along.
Yeah,
as they
yeah,
talk.
yeah.
Probably be easier
I was getting to
to see that screen.
Oh, yeah?
The extras. Yeah, I'm just asking, would it be helpful at all to go through what has been on file, or is it more helpful to go directly to this A7?
I think it's better to go through the A7.
Okay. If there are extra,
There will be a screen.
it'll be on the screen, and to the extent there are extra copies, we can leave them here in the back. Sure.
Okay, if I may.
Please.
Thank you. So again, my name is Daniel Dubinet. I'm an architect. I've been practicing architecture for 23 years. I've had the privilege to.
Apologies, if I can just ask everybody in the audience, we just want to make sure that the YouTube is able to pick up just the one voice. Thank you.
So I've had the privilege to have worked in town, in our community. I've had the privilege of working here for the last 23 years, and I've taken a lot of pride in my work. And I think one of the things that is important to me is that I create beautiful architecture, not only for my clients, but for the neighborhood. It's something I take a lot of pride into. So I was honored to be asked to design a house of worship for Rabbi Bogominsky and his congregation, and was involved in some previous designs on different sites. So this site, located Old Short Hills Road in Parsonage Hill, is over a 3-acre lot. It's a 3.32 acre piece of property. Again, it's on the corner, and it's located in the R3 zone. And there are no variances, which is hard for me to say because usually I'm presenting and I'm needing a variance or a waiver of some sort. But here we are with a fully conforming architectural set of plans in front of you. But I would like to explain a little bit about the design and the floor plan. But I'd like to start with the site itself. And I look at this Google imagery, and one of the things that I've been driving down Old Short Hills Road for many, many years, and I never honestly noticed the house that was on the property before, unless you were specifically looking for it. And I think it's a street, particularly this part of the street, portion of the street, there's not a lot of homes that front on the road. See a lot of trees, moving kind of fast. And I'm kind of pleased to say that as a result of this application and how the building was sited, that I think it's going to stay the same, where you're going to drive by and you'll have to look for it to notice it. It's a relatively low structure. The way that the topography lays out, the first floor, if you're standing on the corner, and I'll go through some of the exhibits, but the first floor is 5 feet below the street level. So it's a 2-story structure with a walkout lower level. And the height of the building from the corner is about 16 feet tall. So I thought this image was good because we're going to maintain a lot of the mature trees that border the property on Parsonage Hill, on Old Short Hills Road, to the neighbor to the left, or I should say to the west. So that's our imagery. And one of the things that's very interesting is that the house of worship requires it to be on a 3-acre lot. So that's very hard to find. And it's one of the conditions that it be in a residential zone. So here we are in the R3 and with a conforming use and building. And so one of the things about the property is, let's go to the next slide. The bulk requirements. So the bulk requirements of the R3 are as follows. So it's 13% of the lot. So you could have a building coverage of 18,818. The proposed is 8,443. So we're about 5%, almost 6%, where 13% is allowed. So again, the building by itself on the lot is small in nature. Lot coverage, you're allowed 35%. Because of the parking requirements, we're at almost 35%. We're a little shy of that. And the FAR, that's also very low. 25% is the maximum allowed, and we're proposing 14.53%, 21,000 square feet. Our building, in residential applications, the basement or the lower level does not count as FAR. So as a reference point, we're about 12,000 square foot of FAR if it was a residential application, but because we have the lower level and it's a commercial building, the lower level counts. So we're at 21,000 square feet. And building height, maximum allowed is 32 feet. But it's 32 feet from the average grade around the building. So there's only one portion of the building that will be 32 feet, which is at the lower level. The main part of the building is about 20 feet tall. It's a 10-foot high first floor, 9-foot high second floor. So again, relatively low building.
And Dan, is that methodology that you just mentioned for purposes of calculating the height, is that the methodology that's mandated in the ordinance?
Yes, yes. Then all the other bulk requirements, which is a 100-foot setback from, we have two fronts. We have Parsonage Hill, we're at 105. From Old Short Hills Road, we're at 100. And the requirement is that we be 40 feet from the side, where we're actually 178, and 99 from this little funny shape here on the property. It's also some of the requirements for the house of worship follow. Again, it'd be a 3-acre parcel, have a lot frontage of 200 feet. We have 371 feet and 318 feet, where 200 is required. So we're significantly larger on the frontages. Okay. And I think the siting of the building, that was our first step, is how do we site the parking and how do we site the structure? So I think it was a really nice approach that, of course, we pushed the parking to the rear of the property. And so because if it was the alternative, it would be worse. You would have a parking lot that you would probably drive down and see. But now the front of the building is going to be located this portion. So that's our main entrance. So it's not something that's going to be, it's not like here's the front of the building, here I am, So you'd have to be part of the congregation and actually make your way into the site to appreciate the front of our building. Okay. Let me take you through the plans. But before I take you through the plans, I want to just tell you a little bit about the logic behind the plan, or the reason for it, the way it's shaped and the way it is. We wanted a very symmetrical very symmetrical structure. Part of it dates back to the history and the timeliness of it. And so it's a very, very organized architectural plan. With the sanctuary, for me, I looked at the sanctuary as obviously the heart of the building. And so for me, I try to create like this rib cage that would be a protective layer, which is the program that surrounds the sanctuary. And by the design of the hallways that wrap around it, and through, maybe I'll show you the exterior, is I want to try and separate the sanctuary from the surrounding protective layer that surrounds. Of course, the Torah, or the Ark, needs to face east, so that's why this portion of the building faces east, which faces Old Short Hills Road. So the plan is very organized and very logical. If you're coming in from the parking lot, there's a one-story vestibule. Then you enter the building, there's a two-story lobby with some functional coat closets and things, strollers. So it's kind of our mudroom. And then you could decide to enter the sanctuary or move around the hallways to get to the additional program. We've created 2 stair towers for egress that balance both on the north and south of the property. And then we kept, like I said, all the other supporting functions for the sanctuary wrap around it. So we have on this level, we have the kitchen. Then there's a portion of a storage facility. So things that we need, tables and chairs, and that we need to facilitate for the sanctuary, be housed in that storage area. Then there's going to be a library over here, and then the rabbi's office to the north. The sanctuary is a 2-story space, and it's going to mostly be divided with a movable partition. And so this is the same plan, but just a different function shown for the sanctuary. So normal, I don't know, 95% of the time, if not more, there'll be seating in the sanctuary. I showed 150 seats. I was trying to show a very packed seating arrangement. This is probably not what we will wind up with, but I didn't want there to be any question of like, oh, can you fit more seating in the sanctuary? So this is 18 by 18 chairs with 18-inch aisles. And so this diagram shows 150 seats with the flex space, or I should say the gathering space over here that's more flexible, which will have probably tables and chairs and other things that will happen most of the time. It'll probably be empty, but when there is a large function of the high holidays and the bigger events, we'll be able to move back the walls and add another 150 seats. Brings us to about 300 chairs. And again, these are a very tight arrangement of chairs. That's our first floor. I'll take you to the second floor. So to get to the second floor, we'll have 2 means of egress. So we'll have the staircases that are located in the corners. We'll also have an elevator. Will take us upstairs. Upstairs will mostly be the Hebrew school classroom and some additional office space. So we have 3 classrooms dedicated and an additional office space and some bathrooms. So we have the double height foyer here, and then we have our sanctuary. In the lower level, again, we'll have the ability to get to the lower level with 2 means of egress, an elevator, and we'll also have that lower level entry here. So the things that'll happen in the basement will be,
Again, please keep it quiet in the audience. Thank you.
Actually need some water.
Small hand soon,
So I was gonna drink that.
And I'm desperate.
Sure, they didn't open it, did they?
Don't drink anything. Sorry, the anticipation of presenting got overwhelming. Whew. Sorry. So the lower level is where we're gonna have the daycare facility and some additional program that I'd like to show you. So basically,
Before you move, just
Yeah.
a follow-up question. Is there a means internally to the building for folks that, nursery school children and their parents that would be dropping them off? Is there an internal route to get them from what I'll refer to as the upper lot or the a lot immediately to the west of the building down to the lower level area that you've described as where the nursery school location is?
thank you. So yes, on the first floor, you'll have the ability to obviously enter the front main entrance, and you'll most likely take this stair tower to get down to that facility in the basement.
They can take the elevator too.
You can take the elevator as well. Thank you. Yeah, based on the new traffic pattern, if we're going to park and walk your children in, you probably come from the upper level. And if you're doing a quick drop off, well, that would be lovely because we had a little reception space, an office that would probably have some glass on it so you can see who's coming in and control the flow of who's ever down there. And then we were asked to design, we have 4 rooms available. Those have egress windows. 2 of the classrooms will have direct access if needed. And then we've created some flex space, probably maybe some interior play space, which could function as a classroom, but this might be, inclement weather, place to play, a little teacher's lounge. And then in the back, we have the mikveh that didn't get much airtime, but we do have that program that's in the basement, and storage area and mechanical. So obviously we have some construction drawings to do and development. So the mechanical might have to grow, the storage might have to get smaller, but in general, this is the program that we would like and that fits. And I try to identify, because I know there was some conversation, there's about 5,000 square feet of available daycare stuff, and the rest of the 3,000 square feet is other program.
Do you have a separate exhibit that shows that, Daniel, or no?
Just here, like I try to shade in light pink.
So could you just, are you able to identify what sheet number in the set that's been marked as A7, that particular
Yeah.
slide relates to?
1A1.
1A1? And is it your testimony that the areas in pink are the areas that are devoted to the nursery school use?
Yes.
And what is the square footage on that?
5,100 square feet.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's the overall view of the planning of the building. And then the next is the elevations that go with it. So my inspiration was, again, a very classical, old world style structure that had a more timeless feeling. We did not want to, we wanted to depart from looking like a residence because it's not a residence. And I think it fits in because it doesn't fit in, right? So there's this notion, okay, well, we're going to try to make it look like a house, but it's not really a house. So now we wanted to have our own identity. We wanted to be rooted in rich architectural styles and be something very classical. Of course, I tried maybe to do something modern, a little bit more creative in the sense, a different style, but we kept coming back to let's keep it rooted, rich in the traditions of potentially what an old civic building temple would feel like and look like. So one of the things, because the property is really nice with 370 feet of frontage and about a 25-foot change in grade, just kind of gently slopes off. So I tried to design the building with a very strong, what we call plinth base. And it would look like the architectural elements are sitting on top of this plinth base. And one of the things that I'm going to develop is try to create this like big separation here architecturally. So the synagogue, the sanctuary part of it feels like a little jewel sitting on top of the box. Of course, with the limitations of height and other things, I tried to, I have about 2 foot differential from the thing. So, but again, I think through slightly different treatment of the materials and design, I'll achieve that look I'm looking for. You'll see this is the rooftop mechanical, and it looks really bad two-dimensionally, but I'll have some renderings for you that'll show you that the mechanical, because of the sight lines, you won't see it. And actually,
Are those mechanical units or are they screens?
that's a screen that's going to hide mechanical units. And I would testify that you will not see that. It's located in the center portion of the roof. Of course, when you see the two-dimensional drawing, it looks like it's a strong design feature, but it's not. And then the rest of the architecture just going with the same vocabulary that's used as inspiration. We're gonna most likely earth tones, some rough cut limestone for the plinth base, and some cast stone details for the other elements in the building. We're going to introduce a lot of stained glass. Thank you. Stained glass to create that spiritual light and the kaleidoscope effect on certain key parts, obviously in the sanctuary, and probably a little bit on the front entrance. Want some stained glass.
I'm sorry, if you could
yes.
stay zoomed in on that sheet that you were just before, and if you could identify again what sheet in A7 we're zoomed in on at the moment.
Thank you. It does not have a sheet name.
And count.
7.
It's a slide.
It's the 7th sheet.
Okay, thank you. So if you could zoom in, I think, are you proposing as an architectural feature some balconies on the second floor?
Just to try to create an architectural interest, the balconies will not be accessible and or usable for function. They're just purely aesthetic balconies.
Yeah, that's exactly the reason I was asking.
Yeah.
There's a question, I believe it was in the planner's report, as to whether or not those can be accessible.
Right, the front one this is the vestibule will have a little bit of an overhang, so this is purely aesthetic.
I think there was also a question in the planner's report. Is this building going to be designed in order to afford, you just mentioned the rooftop mechanicals. Will there be access for any technicians or maintenance personnel that would need to have roof access to attend to that HVAC? Will there be an access point for them on the roof?
Thank you. Yeah, on the second floor, we'll have just hatches, rooftop accesses with ladders. So we'll have 2 of those, I believe, to be able to access the rooftop.
So if the board were to see fit to approve this application, I believe the planner's report had requested that as a condition of approval that your architecturals just be resubmitted to show the precise location of that access. Is that something the applicant can agree to?
Absolutely. Yeah, there is a slight change, so I thank you for that. So the drawings that we're now looking at are after the planners, some of his comments. So they do show the rooftop access. They do show the rooftop mechanicals that weren't shown before.
So I guess the only other detail is with regard to the kitchen, and certainly that's shown on the floor plan, correct?
Yes.
Now, you also had alluded to construction drawings that would, come further down the line. But there's been a lot of testimony and also a specific question, again, I believe in the planner's report with regard to air intakes and exhaust fans. Has there been at least general thought as to how those would be routed?
Yes, any mechanical devices, bathroom fans, kitchen exhaust fans will be located in the rooftop.
As opposed to, what would be the other alternative, mounted on the side of the building,
Yeah,
pointing
like,
horizontally outward?
yes, so we'd like to avoid that both for visual and, yeah, mostly visual, because obviously it'd be more practical, but everything on the roof.
So is it your opinion then, as an architect, that visually it would be preferable to route those to the roof?
No, definitely, yeah.
Do you also have, do you have an opinion as to whether or not that by routing them through the roof as opposed to pointing them horizontally out through the sides would likely to have a lesser impact with regard to?
Yeah,
the neighborhood?
absolutely. I think any smell that would come from cooking, you'd be, certainly we're 100 feet, if not more, from the street and the neighboring properties. Yeah, it would not be negative.
When it comes time to actually fine tuning construction drawings that you need to submit in order to get, an electrical permit, building permit, what have you, are there applicable health and safety codes that pertain to those types of installations?
Yes, of course.
And will your plans be submitted, in compliance with those applicable rules and regulations?
Yes, I will.
I think the last question, Danny, that I have for you, and thanks very much. You had earlier on in your testimony recited, and I think you showed the bulk chart on one of your slides, the various standards that the ordinance requires and that this particular application complies with. Those standards, in the ordinance, do they specifically contemplate that these are the standards that apply in residential zones if you're proposing a conditionally permitted house of worship in a residential zone?
Yes, we were bound by the same bulk requirements for a residential home and a house of worship. Does that answer your question?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, so the same setbacks, although our setbacks, let's say if you were in the zone, you'd have a 40-foot front yard setback. Now we're have to be at 100.
Yeah, I guess that's what.
Yes.
It's my
It's a
fault.
little bit more
Yeah,
restrictive.
I could have given you a better question. Yeah, let me rephrase that. The specific conditional use standards that you testified we complied with, are those conditional use standards under the Milburn ordinance applicable to houses of worship that are sited in residential zones?
Yes.
I don't have any further questions for this. We do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a few more slides if I have time.
Please, yeah, you can
I'll go
finish your
fast.
slides and then I think we're gonna hold questions.
Thank you so much. This, I thought was an interesting diagram. Basically, it's a site section, so in this section, again, there's
When you
the,
say this, you mean page 8 of the package. Thank you. This
Yes.
is good for the record.
Thank you.
They don't know.
And just because this is an 11-page exhibit, right? So by my count, so make
Yes.
sure it's accurate.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I wanted to show in this diagram is a person standing on the Parsonage Hill side. And the 5-foot level change I was trying to explain when I started about the site. So basically the first floor is located 5 feet below the street level. And the top of the roof that you would perceive from standing on Parsonage Hill would be 16 feet tall. The top of the roof is 16 feet above your head. And then when you get down to the parking lot and you're in front of the building, that height will be 23 feet 4 inches. So a relatively, in my opinion, modest height that the building you will perceive. Then I wanted to show again the perspectives that. Of course, it shows off the architecture, but what it doesn't show is the significant amount of trees that will be on the site. But if I showed the trees, you wouldn't get to see the building. So for this purposes of these renderings, we've really kind of taken all the trees out of the site, but that's not how it'll be. I'm going to show you the next slide that shows you with the trees, and you won't see the building. But basically, these are the different views that I have. So this top right one is from Old Short Hills Road. This one is also from Old Short Hills Road. This is the view of the few parking that we'd have before we could enter the building. Then this is Parsonage Hill side.
The bottom left.
Sorry.
Is just good to say. And we're
Bottom
on the
left one.
slide on page 9.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I apologize. This is from the parking lot. This is our main entrance. And this one, it would be from Parsonage Hill.
This would mean directly to the right, labeled as north elevation. on
North
the same sheet.
elevation. Yes. Then the next two slides, the last two slides, was our rendering of the site with the trees. So again, back to my testimony, which I truly believe that once we're done and the project's complete, you will drive by and you'll have to look to see the building. So I think it's a positive
The
design.
slides 10 and 11 show with trees.
Yes, so this one's from the view of Parsonage Hill Road and Old Short Hills Road. So all these mature trees will stay. This is where our sign is located. So the building is back there hiding. So I'm excited about that for all of us. I mean, I think that the rabbi and his community will have their house of worship, and we won't be negatively impacted by, let's say, a large building that just, is we're not used to seeing. It's like no one likes change, but I feel really comfortable that as a result of how the building is sited and the setbacks that are there, that we don't see it. And so then this one I wanted to show for our neighbors on Park, and I think. Well, I guess after the traffic testimony, it's a better, safer situation to have these two opposing entrances and exits. But what I discovered is that this elevation down here on the site is about 305. And our building, which you'll have to take this turn up here, our building's at 314. So it's significantly set back and at a different elevation, and with the opportunity of all these trees, again, I don't think we'll be coming out and seeing the building. And with the swale gone, we'll be able to render this better, but we'll be able to plant a lot more in this area that before was going to be this drainage swale, which we couldn't plant on. So now we can.
Yeah, and, well, just to more fairly characterize, it was a full-blown basin, where it's not really a swale.
Sorry,
The
yes.
central area previously, this is being changed and it's reflected in the concept plans and will be reflected in the fully engineered plans. The area that Dan's referring to, viewing to the west from Park Road, to the left, was the former location of the stormwater basin.
Understood. Thank you.
That concludes my slides.
Thank you. I know likely the board has many questions.
I just
Graham
have
has
one point of
question.
factual clarification,
Go ahead.
just based on most of it. Just with respect to the bulk chart, your indication figure for the lot coverage, is that with respect to the prior to concept plan that was presented, or is that based on?
I haven't gotten the new numbers, but obviously
Okay.
we're not.
I just wanted to make
Thank
sure
you.
that figure.
Thank you. So these are potentially to be updated.
Yeah, just the lot coverage. Everything else I could attest
Thank
to.
you, just one.
Understood. Thank you. Thanks, Graham. We're gonna hold questions from the board for the next meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, maybe make a request. These are excellent. I mean, the building is beautiful. The vantage points are great. Is there any way we could get a vantage point from the property line so the neighbors can see what they would be
Yeah,
seeing?
absolutely.
Is that a possibility?
Yeah, the hard part is because we had it all prepared last time and with all the trees and really took our time to sugar maple. So as soon as I get the new planting, I'll be able to get it more accurate. But absolutely, I would love to show off that.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna have questions from the board more, then questions from the public at the beginning of our next meeting, which I believe we're going to carry to January 8th, if I understood.
Yes, and I'll follow up, but yes, I did, state on the record, I'll follow up in writing so that David can have it. But yes, the applicant has consented to an extension through January 9th, excuse me. And if I could just have a sufficient announcement that the application is being carried without need for further notice, yeah.
Can I just, so we're gonna hear this application at the meeting?
At the relay.
Because there will be 3 new board members who have not listened.
So they would not be voting on that.
I don't anticipate that.
That's
I don't-
easy. they would be able to participate, correct? But 16 people would.
I don't anticipate that there would even be a vote on the night, likely not, but I don't know, just depending on how much more testimony.
Likely not.
Right, so those three new board members, I mean, I guess nothing can stop them now, but they would have an opportunity to go back and review the tape before they vote, and they would have to do that before they vote, so. A lot of catching up to do, I'm sure.
One instance, there was a gap in the YouTube recording for today, potentially. Could we get that copy of transcript from those devices?
Yeah, I believe these devices will provide a written transcript.
Well, they won't,
Could we get the
right, they
recording
will
as
have to be
well?
prepared.
It would have to be prepared.
Could we get the raw audio recording?
In anticipation that there'll be new board members that'll need to listen to it.
Because we stopped it.
Yes, in the instance that when we go back, if we can't find it, I think we can
Yeah. if
provide.
I find it, we need to-
Great.
And
Thank you.
will we have the updated plans by January 9th?
Will we have the updated plans, I guess,
Yeah, I
10
know that
days
the
in
civil
advance?
engineers are working on them.
Okay.
So tomorrow I'll get kind of a status report on where they stand. It's in the applicant's best interest to get them submitted as soon as possible. Believe me, they're working hard towards that, with understanding it's the holiday season and all. But I'll find out more tomorrow, but that's certainly our hope, and we're very motivated to get them in sooner rather than later.
Right, and so hopefully not.
Yeah,
like the
no,
day
no.
before.
And the applicant also recognizes that when we get to the point where a formal vote has to be taken, those finalized plans will have had to have been on file a minimum of 10 days before that date. The applicant's very well aware of that.
Okay, yes, and would give our traffic consultant an
Yes.
opportunity to review and provide written response. Okay, with that said, motion to adjourn?
Wait, let me make the announcement. Yep. got that.
Sorry. make the
No, all
announcement.
good, no worries. Okay, so this matter is going to be carried to the board's January 8th, 2025 meeting at 7:30 PM here at the Millburn Town Hall. I think everybody knows how to get here. No further notice either by certified mail, personal service, or publication shall be required. By virtue of me making this announcement, that is your notice that this is going to be reheard again on January 8th. So that's it. See you all then. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Happy
Motion
Hanukkah
to
as well.
adjourn. Can I get a second? All in favor?
Anybody opposed?